Fantastic to hear your presentation, Amer.
Thank you.
Can't wait to go on a Stenline ship, to be honest. I don't know what the rest of you says, but I want to fight that octopus. So I don't know if we're going to sit down.
We just sit here?
Yeah. Yeah.
Do I close this? Yeah. Maybe.
Yeah, I think we have.
I like to hide bad things, so I sit there behind the table.
Yeah, I'll use this as a screen. Both of you, I think, was really, really interesting insights. And I'm going to have a small chat with you and also with the audience. And if anyone in the audience want to, have a question or something, just raise the hand and we can go down with the mic. Anders, would you be possible to go around if anyone has a question? This one will work, I think. You need to switch it on in that case. But first of all, I'm a little bit curious. I'll put up some questions like how digital innovation is driven. And I mean, you talked about the CEO, and you're running these systems right now. I think I remember them. Pluto was one, right? So I'm going to sit in the sauna later on and go like, have you heard about Stenline, this Pluto imaging thing? And you have trade management intelligence, and you've got Stina as well. In that journey, first of all, I mean, how long did it take to start basically moving from the ID to convincing, senior level management, the CEO or the owners or the CTO about doing this?
I'm in a lucky position. I don't have to convince anyone, really. But I mean, today everything is a commodity. So Stina, for instance, the first version was done in 3 days because we don't build anything ourselves. So if you look at the architecture of Stina, the natural language processing comes from Watson. The classification comes from Recast, a startup in Paris. And then the databases, two separate ones, come from Amazon. Sending SMS, we do that through Twilio. And then notifications and emails, we do that through OneSignal.
Right.
And this is just APIs. It's nothing hard. It's just
nothing hard.
I'm a programmer by heart, so every prototype I just put together takes like 4 hours or so. It's not, and then if it works, someone will pick it up in the organization. It's about the mindset. Every time we finish a project, sometimes I do it myself because it's so simple, but sometimes we just go outside. Yeah. So any consultancy or new small company. And I tell them, how about this? And they say, oh, cool, let's do that. So they do it. It takes like 2 weeks or so. And then we run it a little bit. We test it with customers and so on. And then if like Stina, in this case, it turned out to be valuable. So what we do is we put out these like ads internally, and we say, who wants to drive Stina to be the next generation customer service agent? And then anyone. So in this case, it's a guy who's 27 years old. A kid, extremely ambitious, know nothing about natural language processing, but he understands the vision and he wants to realize it.
Right.
Sure. And he yells at me like every week. Sometimes can we do this? He says, no. This is the roadmap and this is how we're going to do it. And you're wrong. I say, okay, sure, sorry. So it's important to find people that are passionate about things and don't get in their way.
Yeah. So basically what your strategy is basically doing a lot of research to find, all these different companies in Australia, in France, startups, and basically look for the latest technology. And would that be an advice that you would give the audience?
Figure out how you can use it. And, it's about solving a problem also. If you have a problem, it needs to be solved. Otherwise, it doesn't make any point, to just use the technology just for using technology. But it needs to solve a problem.
So it seems a little bit it's like the same thing you're talking about, Cate. Basically, look into other markets. Look into what other companies are doing, not just within your niche or with your vertical, and get inspiration from that. What is your best recipe for giving an advice to the audience, and how can they start doing this by, let's say, when they go home tonight or tomorrow?
In terms of getting inspiration, oh gosh, well, I think actually I might disagree with you a little bit in that I think it is about identifying the need perhaps first, and then perhaps being as creative as possible about how you can solve it. And it's really interesting. I don't think I've ever heard someone say it's so simple to implement before. But normally I'm a big believer in kind of bootstrapping things and coming up with a quick, maybe not a high-tech solution that comes up that solves that same challenge, but the tech is going to be much cheaper to
It's for
run.
free, basically.
Yeah, and everything's far more in your control than training your staff to do something slightly differently. So, I'm sorry, I don't know. The world of innovation is so huge, I can't say.
Yeah, there's no real answer
here, but also making your needs known to as many people might be a good place to start, because a lot of really good innovation and inspiration comes out of places where you don't even know where you should look, essentially. So if you can share your challenges with more people in your peer group or within your organization, almost naturally the idea can just come to you. And there are businesses, I think, who put their whole 5-year plan or what they want to achieve in the next 5 years on YouTube, and they make that all known, and then everyone suddenly can pitch together and it becomes more likely to happen.
I think that's a really great, interesting advice, because again, like you said, data needs to be within our premises and it needs to be behind this dusty firewall. And like you're saying, why don't we put the corporate strategy for the next years out there for everybody to interact with? I think that would be quite controversial if you went to the CEO level and did that in one way. But I think it's really interesting, as you say, because then you will get your audience, also your customers, engaging with your company in a whole new way and coming up with ideas maybe you didn't even think of.
Yeah, or the tech companies. There could be a tech company in Australia who chances across it and sends an email, and they solve that problem for you.
Yeah, so you just use it. And the problem is not very often that people don't have ideas or can think creative, but the problem seems to be this, and I don't know why people do this, but they put this mental, made-up obstacle that's not really an obstacle. It's like, I'll give you an example. For instance, Stina, this was before I was promoted for running the digital innovation. I just did that, and then the invoice came to the company, and they asked me, what's this? I said, yeah, it's a new cool idea. And they asked me, where's the CapEx? And back then, I didn't know what a CapEx was. I just said, I don't understand. What's your question? Yeah, where's the budget allocation and stuff? I don't just pay it. I don't know. Don't ask me. And then they said, we cannot pay it because, is there no money in the account, or what do you mean? Yeah, but it doesn't work like that. So I got called up, and I explained, I don't really care. This is something new. We have to be on board, and if you don't like it, then fire me. It's as simple as that. And then, people sit there and say, okay, I cannot type on this keyboard because I don't have a CapEx. That's bullshit. That's made up. It's not like the CapEx is creating some kind of force field over your keyboard. That's just in your head. And no real manager or leader will ever shoot down on someone who thinks creative or innovation or new. No one. That's just bad leadership. Leave the company then.
Okay, cool. I think basically great actionable advice. So basically, break more boundaries.
There are no boundaries. They're made up.
Don't ask for permissions. Do things, and then take the consequences of that.
Don't blow up an engine for $200 million, but a fucking service for which is free to use. Just do it. It doesn't affect anything.
I think it's really great. One really good actionable advice, and I think there's not a controversial.
Sorry about that.
What you're saying. I think there's in the end, when you did that Stina, it was prototype, it works, and it shows a case rather than you trying to describe it in text or in a PowerPoint case. And then, of course, you need to probably industrialize it or scale it, and maybe identify together which targets groups should we use this on, like you are into, Cate, and saying, we need to find our needs and who are our customers, and also work from both levels. So I think from my perspective, it's not really you have to do this or that. You can probably combine.
Now they're doing all those market research, user tests. I don't care.
Yeah,
it's boring for me now.
Right.
Amer moved on.
Next thing. he's from Cate, when I was listening to your presentation, I said, okay, this improving engagement. For business to business things. That's so vital. It seems that we need to improve engagement. What would you say is the biggest obstacles obstacles for companies doing that? Is it, again, just a mental block, or why are they maybe reluctant if they don't?
I think it's just the traditional way of doing things, really. People believe that what they've always done is how things work, and it's very hard. The bigger your company is, the harder it is to change it at that point. So, yeah, and this is why all these new businesses are growing so quickly, because they don't have the standard way of doing things. They have this fresh perspective where they can say, why does everyone do it like this? Wouldn't it be better if we took this whole new approach? So it's probably the big businesses themselves, their own barrier, I would say.
So basically the legacy and the heritage and basically the mental models that this is the way we've always done.
Yeah.
And when we start with a startup or something, we don't have any legacy, and we can quite honestly break every rule because there are none.
Exactly. And the thing is, it has taken years to get that big organization to a certain point. There's all these layers of structure and all these processes that have taken 50, 60 years or so to get to that point. So suddenly undoing that is very counterintuitive. But I think the best way to do it is to leave the standard company structure as it is and then set up a splinter group who are almost challenged to disrupt the main business. So they're run completely separately as their own startup to say, just do whatever you like. Would be the perfect business splinter group for you, perhaps. I don't know.
Yeah, or I would say, or alternatively, just hire a profile like Amer to go in and cause havoc in the existing organization. Now, I think that's a really valuable insight to all of us, that basically if we are in our mindset stuck or in a tradition of pattern thinking, either we just break the rules, or because there are no rules really, there's a mental, I don't know, F-ups or something.
Made-up safety environment.
Made-up safety environment. Yeah. Or if we can't do that, well, then just create a splinter group, basically to say, well, down here or over here, I can do all the challenging things, but back here we have business as usual. This works. Don't mess it around too much. But effectively to face or to meet the challenges that we get from new competitors entering and disrupting our market, we should become more disruptive ourselves by launching our own startup, basically.
And I think that the bigger business is used to learning from success, but now things are moving so fast, these smaller groups need to learn from failure, almost. Yeah. So it's completely the opposite way of doing things.
This is a big thing. I travel a lot, so when I get back to the office, I ask, so what's hard? Where have you failed? No, everything is fine. And I get very nervous when they say that. So everyone is just doing what they know. No one is challenging themselves. So there are two things, like two principles. It sounds like I am an outlaw, but there are two principles I always follow. So the first one is don't hurt anyone, obviously. You can hurt yourself, depends on how much you work, but don't hurt anyone. And number two, don't break the law. Everything else, rules, policies, bullshit like that, that's...
And I would like to add a third one. Don't make big machines stop, probably.
Yeah, of course. You don't go into the ship and rip out the engine and say, let's digitalize this. That doesn't work. You have to be common sense. You need to have common sense. Okay, that's the third one.
Okay, cool. Yeah. Thanks very much. I would love to talk to you more and more, but time is running as well, and we're going to have a coffee break right now. So it's time for coffee and network. We'll have coffee out there. We have 20 minutes for coffee. I'm going to try to be a little bit of time cop here. Try to be back at latest 11:30. So on 11:30, everybody's sitting down here again. Go out and network and mingle. You have coffee outside there, and thanks very much, Cate and Amer.
Thank you.
Okay.